This is CityCast Seattle. I'm Jane C. Hu, and here's what Seattle's talking about. Seattle might finally be getting some public restrooms soon. Just make sure your phone is charged if you want to get in. And if you're out and about in public long enough to need to hit up that bathroom, you're bound to run into a tablet screen prompting you for a tip. When should we be tipping these days? We're going to talk about all that in just a second with Marcus Harrison Green, founder of the South Seattle Emerald and Hinton Publishing. Welcome, Marcus.
Thank you so much, Jane.
We also have Brett Hamill, writer, performer, and cartoonist behind the weekly series Doom Loop. Welcome, Brett.
It's good to be here with my august publisher for the first time.
It's March, Britt. It's March. Sorry, that was
okay. I get you.
Sorry.
Leave the comedy to me, buddy.
There you go.
So we've somehow never had you two on the show together before, but I suggested this last week because I saw an opportunity and was like, well, we'll get them to hang out.
Yeah, it is the bad boys of South Seattle, as we're known. You know, one of us is the Martin Lawrence and the other is the Will Smith. So, you know,
I'm the Martin Lawrence.
Oh, really, Brett? I thought it was the other way around.
Yes,
no, he can have Will.
All right, well, let's get into it for today. Marcus, I know you just published a piece that includes perspectives from local vets on the war with Iran. I mean, our country is at war, though our president still waffles on calling it that. What are people telling you, Marcus?
Yeah, I'll say the common thread around the three veterans who were willing to go on the record with me. You know, what they hear from folks who are even enlisted right now is that, you know, they're not afraid of necessarily dying for a war they don't believe in, but they are terrified of killing in a war that they don't believe in, particularly one that is unprovoked. I think this is the second unprovoked war in the last 25 years, if you count the Iraq War in 2003. As one of the vets said, at the very least, you know, as much as they didn't care for George W. Bush, at least he had the decency to propagandize the American populace before that war to get him on board.
That is a low bar right there.
Yeah, I mean, as of now, this is a very unpopular war. The most recent poll that I saw, only 33% of Americans even have some level of, you know, approval of this war. So, you know, we're there, we're spending billions of dollars on something that is a war of choice, and something, as many of these veterans said, if we really wanted to support the troops, why are we not spending it on healthcare here? Why are we not spending it on housing for them? Why are we, you know, not taking into consideration the fact that the best way to support the military people and veterans is to not put them in a situation where they could die from, quite frankly, for nothing? As this discussion continues on about, you know, what we're doing over there in the Middle East, I really do hope that folks can think about the people who actually have to go fight and die in this war. As Gina Baskins told me, she just got out of the military in September. She was like, I really wish people could understand that, you know, a lot of these people who are in the military, they like her, they got in there because there was no other options. I mean, it was a ladder of social mobility for her. As she said, you know, this could be somebody who is your Walmart greeter or McDonald's server who is over there now fighting simply because our society didn't provide another option, you know, for them in terms of any other opportunity.
I mean, I saw a few local news reports on the death of Ariana Savino, who is an Air Force captain from Washington. And so far, there have been 13 members of the military, the U.S. military, who have died, and at least 200 injured, at least per The Guardian. And I mean, the latest numbers from the Washington Post are that at least 1,500 Iranian civilians have been killed, including, as we know now, a lot of children. It is all a tragedy. How does one square the imbalance here? Here in the U.S., of course, we are focused on a lot of folks from the U.S. who have been injured or killed in action, but those are people who are inflicting so much pain and death in our names somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, that is why in talking to these veterans, and look, these are people who have very complicated and complex feelings about the institution in the sense that it did provide them some benefit, right? For some of them, it did give them discipline. It did give them some social mobility. At the same time, this is an institution that, quite frankly, continues to beast, an imperial war machine that does a lot of damage across the globe. And as they were saying, many of them thought that they would never even utter these words. They said that they would encourage people to not enlist in the military at all. Like if they were saying, if you were 18 coming out of high school, or you're 22, coming out of college and, don't have a clear direction in life, they were saying, like, find some other way to serve this country than being in this military at this point. Because I think it's okay in saying this, some of them don't view it anymore as a legitimate institution that does anything than, serves at the behest of corporations, and the whims of a president who, depending on what his blood sugar is, today, may or may not want to invade Cuba. I don't know.
Brett, what do you think of this?
I mean, it's heartbreaking, and you really feel for someone like the person Marcus talked to, who that was her viable option. On the other hand, within living memory of just about everyone older than, let's see, 22 now, we've gone on these like wars of choice, these, almost explicitly crusades, Islamophobic, violence. This particular war started with the bombing of a girls' school. And I've read articles where a lot of veterans and people in the military said right off the bat that showed what was happening here. When you start there, how much lower is it going to go?
So I wanted to go back to one thing that one of the people you interviewed talked about, Marcus, and we've been kind of talking around it a little bit. I mean, she said she joined the military essentially because of the poverty draft. Is this just what we're going to have as long as we have a volunteer military?
Most likely. I mean, I think even when we had the draft, right, you had folks of affluence and means and connections who would do their best to get out of the draft. I mean, you look at our current president. He didn't serve because of his ankles or something like that. And bone spurs, there you go. And so many other folks. Dick Cheney, who was the vice president during the time of the 2003 Iraq invasion, right? I mean, he was somebody who was a war hawk, and he himself didn't serve in Vietnam by saying that he had other things to do at the time, right? There's a line in the movie Troy, I think Odysseus says, and he says, war is old man talking and it's young people dying. I mean, and that's been since time immemorial. And I don't see there being any change until the American people, quite frankly, truly just get fed up with this. And I think it's growing. I mean, I see everybody from libertarians to MAGA folks to obviously liberals and progressives and leftists who are all on one accord on this. And so I do think there is a groundswell of disenchantment with what's going on right now. I just really hope that we have an administration at some point that can turn off the tap, if you will, towards our addiction to war and militarism.
It is shocking to see someone like Joe Kent, who stepped down from Homeland Security, counterterrorism, citing the war.
Not to be too much of a wet blanket here, but didn't Kent also resign like moments before it came out that he was under investigation by the U.S. National Counterterrorism Center?
Trump Justice Department investigation.
Both things could be true, I suppose. I guess there's a little part of my brain that wonders if those are connected at all. But please go on.
I mean, he's a horrible white nationalist, but by the same token, there is an amazing opportunity for progressives, the left, liberals, and libertarians, for example, to find some sort of common cause. And like a lot of great movements and a lot of social change has happened when people at seemingly diametrically opposed ends of the spectrum can find some sort of common cause. I'm all for finding common ground.
Yeah, and to Britt's point, I mean, like, you don't even have to go as like extreme as a Joe Kent, right? I mean, there are people like Andrew Schultz and Joe Rogan, folks who were, I guess you could say, right of center, who at this point are like very virulently, anti-war at this moment.
I can say that I was a touring stand-up comedian in the second Bush term. And around year 6 of Bush, I realized that I could go to any deep red gut bucket casino in the most Republican county in the state, and I could tell George W. Bush jokes and they would get laughs, and they would be like full-throated, haha, that guy's an idiot type laughs. And so if there's anything to say for Trump, it's that he speed ran that.
We're in year 6 of
Everything's
Trump,
getting
aren't we?
faster.
This is year 6.
I mean, yes, kind of, but yeah,
Yes.
it's with an asterisk.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it does also seem like he acted essentially unilaterally in this situation. It feels like whether or not he has approval might not make that big a difference.
Yeah, but I mean, I also think that you have a Congress, right, who is Republican controlled, who seemingly is just allowing this to go on carte blanche.
It does feel like a lot of what I learned in US government class in high school somehow just like doesn't apply anymore.
Can you imagine getting a graduate degree in constitutional studies in year 2026? You would have to feel like the biggest dupe. None of these rules apply at all.
If you're studying constitutional law and you got feelings about it, hit us up. Seattle at
Would love to
citycast.fm.
hear
Would
that.
love
Yes.
to talk to you all. Marcus, thank you for bringing us this story. If folks want to read it, where can they find it?
They can find it at the SouthSeattleEmerald.com.
All right, let's take a break. And when we come back, let's talk about these potential new public bathrooms downtown. Publicola reported this week that the Pioneer Square Preservation Board voted to approve some public bathroom stalls to be put into the neighborhood. The company is called Throne, which I can't get over. Have you all heard about these bathrooms?
Yes.
My stepson and I, we called our toilet the throne of contemplation.
Hey.
So I was like, oh, this is okay.
Now we have some public thrones of contemplation.
And there you go. Well, you can only be in there for 10 minutes, but yes.
To me, this is one of the most obvious civic improvements we need to
Yes.
make. The downtown core is woefully shy of, I think the last I checked, there was only like maybe 4 24-hour public restrooms in the entire city limits. 4. This isn't a moonshot. We can build a public restroom. If we can't do that, there is literally nothing we can do civically. Everyone pees and poops. So I read the article. I was like, hell yeah, more bathrooms. And then I got to the part where it said, you have to get an app and you have to pay for it. And then I was lost and I was once again furious at Seattle.
Right. Let's do the rundown here. So Throne is a DC-based company, and they already have these they're basically like bathroom pods. What they kind of remind me of is if you've had a friend who had kind of like a nice farm wedding or something, and they rent those little bathroom trucks. It seems like an urban version of that. So Throne already has bathrooms in Orange County, the Bay Area, LA, Detroit, DC, and then Fairfax, Virginia, and Hyattsville, Maryland, which I guess makes sense if they're DC based. These are solar powered bathrooms. They are free to use. And like Brett mentioned, you need a phone to access them. You can also get an actual physical card. And Throne on their website says that people can partner with, say, a public library to distribute those to the public. It also advertises that it is ADA accessible, it's got a changing table, and that it's got graffiti-resistant wrap. It basically on the inside they have something that seems
We've
like
heard that story before.
resistant. Where there's a will, there's a way. People will definitely.
They call
tag
it challenge wrap.
Yes. They also have mirrors. Like the mirrors have a film on them where you can like peel off the top and replace them if they get graffitied is the idea. And the idea behind having this be accessible only via phone or a card, the company says, is accountability. So if you are in that bathroom pod and they have found evidence of vandalism or misuse in any way, which they say is only 0.2% of the time, then you will be restricted from using Throne. And like Marcus alluded to, there is a 10-minute time limit. And according to, I was looking at the PowerPoint presentation that was presented to the Pioneer Square Preservation Board about this, it would be open from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. downtown. And this is kind of
Oh my God, come on.
This is all ahead of the World Cup.
I just had my
Yes.
3 pints of beer, and now I'm going to take one more sip of water before I go to use the restroom that I'm dying to use. Come on. This is such a roller coaster. I'm so angry.
Britt, in fairness, is there anything open past 8:30 downtown?
Fair enough. At first I thought, oh, it's going to be another pay scheme. And then I just found out here on the air that it's free. But wait, you need an app. But wait, this is though they can like sort of track you to see if you did graffiti. Who gives a shit? If I'm using a tech bathroom in the middle of Pioneer Square, I don't care what is on the walls around me. I am focused on one activity.
I will say if they do want to make it accessible, and I know in the Publicola article, they talked about potentially partnering with organizations that already support the unhoused population. But I do think, they already have, downtown ambassadors or whatever. Can't they just like give these cards to the downtown ambassadors to then distribute? What else do they do?
There's an idea. And who knows? Maybe that is something that they'll be figuring out. It seems like they've just gotten to the point of saying, like, yes, we would like to move forward with this. They decided on what wrap they would like. It's going to be a tree pattern, which, And there are 2 proposed locations right now, one right outside of Lumen Field and another one at 2nd Ave South in South Washington. One of the limiting factors of these bathrooms is because they're solar powered, they really need to be somewhere out in the open. So
they've really thought of every detail, haven't they?
The tree cover could be a problem, which I think is a draw of what makes Pioneer Square beautiful is the kind of older trees in the area. I'm so glad that they've gone for it. I am somewhat confused by the discussion I feel like the Preservation Board has had over bike racks or bike and scooter corrals not fitting the character of the neighborhood, but plunking in these buildings. But, I will not look a gift horse in the mouth.
Yeah, all the urbanists on Blue Sky are clowning about the fact that, like, oh, these high-tech bathrooms fit the character of the neighborhood so much more than these small corrals for scooters. Right. Come on. I've already ranted about this on the show, but like people have to pee and poo. The thing is, we hate poor people to get anything, we don't want poor people to have amenities. We want them to get the hell out of the Metro core so that we can pretend we're in the future, right? So then we come up with these ways of means testing, like having to have an app or a card is just a sort of another barrier for entry, another way of means testing it, because if you're poor, you don't deserve to be able to pee or poo.
Okay, while we're talking about public bathrooms, can we please push to get public bathrooms on light rail? Because the other day, I was riding the Crosslake connection, which was very exciting. I needed to pee so bad, and I ended up having to get some folks who were working at the South Bellevue station. They had a locked porta potty on their work site, and I was like, please, sirs, I just need to pee so bad. And they very graciously let me go in. I guess in a way that's kind of like the same thing as like having a bathroom where you need like a phone to check in. It's like you still are kind of asking for access in a way. Yeah. But I would love to see any option available at light rail. I feel like we really just need that as a public amenity.
When you say on the light rail, Jen, are you meaning like how the Balt bus used to have like a bathroom on?
Oh, no. Just at the station. I was no. We don't want that. All right. Well, we'll see if Throne claims the throne here in Seattle as the #1 public bathroom company. Let's move on and take a break. Once we come back, we'll talk more about potential World Cup ramifications. We're going to talk about tipping. If you're enjoying the podcast, be sure to follow us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen so you never miss an episode. Also, leave us a little review. It's really helpful. And tell your friends about us. You can also get more local news and events delivered right to your inbox by subscribing to our newsletter. Just go to seattle.citycast.fm. And you can find us on Instagram, Blue Sky, and TikTok at CityCast Seattle. And you can watch full episodes of this show on YouTube. Speaking of innovations ahead of the World Cup, guests are going to be coming from all over the world. And not only will they need to pee and poop in those public restrooms, our team was talking about how many of these people are going to be coming from countries that don't have a tipping culture, or at least not the same tipping culture as the US. And the US is weird in our tipping culture. And this is just a perennial conversation I have with people around town. I am always so confused about when I'm supposed to be tipping and how much, and if the norms have changed around that. I mean, one of my team members mentioned that it feels like what really kicked off this change was COVID lockdown. And I'm curious to hear from you all. Do you feel like that was the genesis of this tipping culture change? And like, has the tipping culture changed in Seattle over the last decade or so?
I don't know that it's what COVID brought it about, but you did start to see more of those tip options on the card readers and such. You know, as a left-leaning guy who was raised working class, I have total solidarity with servers and restaurant workers, et cetera. At the same time, you know, you have to realize it's because we're subsidizing them not receiving a working wage. So it's very conflicting for me, especially when you're asked to tip for something like I literally bought like a candy bar. I don't think we need a gratuity involved in this situation.
I think the culture has changed in the sense like, when did it go from 15% was like the standard tip to like 20 to 22 to 25? Like,
I thought 20% was the standard tip.
I was always taught growing up that it was 15%. I mean,
Okay.
grant you, my father, I love him to death, but he's a very frugal person, so it could have been. But it's like, God, I forgot where I was at, but I didn't even see like an option for 15% now. It's like the baseline is 18.
I saw a prompt the other day where the options were 18, 22, or 25. And I was like, this is diabolical. Like, I don't have my 20% there at all.
And then I'll be the guy that hits the other, you know, and it puts off a light you can't see somewhere in the back of house. It's like, oh, we got a cheap bastard here.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
like I just like, come on, 18 and 22, like 20. How about what happened at 20? You know, so.
Yeah, and I don't mind spots. Like I was at Zigzag Cafe not too long ago. And then along with, and then I think the next day I was at Flying Lion Brewery. I probably should not be drinking day after day. But anyway, they both have just a service charge option. And so you don't actually tip. Both of the servers were like, oh, no, I like this option a lot better because everybody pays the same amount. And then it ultimately all goes back to the staff. And so it's a more equitable way to do it. So, you know,
it's more predictable to the consumer too, to know like the real cost of things. I mean, if a place is tipless, does that actually change the likelihood that you would go there? I mention this because our team just found a Tipless in Seattle map of places that don't do tips. I think it's a great name. And it is kind of useful just knowing which places have done away with that in some way.
I'm sorry, but how, like, I get that we're a passive aggressive city, but like, how, like, I mean, come on, like, really? Like,
Tipless
you can
in
go
Seattle.
to a place and you do not have to tip. Like, you can make the decision not to tip. And literally, the site exists so people can like plan out, you know, where they go so they will not, you know,
It does feel very Seattle. Yes.
I mean, come on, man.
I'm of two minds about it. I think if they are paying their employees a living wage where they don't need to depend on tips, they should tout that from the rooftops. And that's something I can get behind and will support specifically. It's like the opposite of when the minimum wage went up and a bunch of places, like some of the ones on that list, like Dick's, for example, added a surcharge, like a 1.5% cost of doing business surcharge because they were being forced to pay their employees, you know, like below the
just
poverty
passing it
line.
on to the consumer.
So,
instead.
I think they
soda
should
tax
shout it
benefit.
from the rooftops. And I've noticed that. I've been to a fuel coffee shop before and noticed that. And I was like, cool. You know, let's have more of that. Sure.
All right, I'm going to list off some situations rapid fire, and you tell me if you tip or not and how much. All right, I'm going to start off with an easy one. You go to a sit-down restaurant.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And
How
if
good is
you
the
don't
food?
tip, you're a monster, I think, in that
Starting
situation.
at 20%,
Yeah.
you know, but yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, if the
coffee
food is
shop.
bad, 15.
Yes.
Did they just give me like a drip coffee or did they actually have to prepare it?
Okay, so there's a nuance there. If they had to prepare it, do you tip?
Yes. If they just handed me a drip coffee, I'm less prone to tip. To be
Okay,
honest with you.
legit. What about food
Yes.
delivery?
The times that I do use it, I do tip, but it's not
Too
that
cheap to even use it. So
often. when it's Brit delivering it to my house, yes.
I mean, how much do you tip? Is it 20% or is it something else? Or
I go with-
15%, as Marcus
I go with 18. I do the Solomon thing. I just split the difference.
There you go. Sure. Okay. What about picking up takeout?
man, I really am conflicted on this one. I'm assuming the tip goes to the back of the house, the people that actually prepared it. I mean, so yeah, I pretty much always do, but sometimes it's like a mom and pop shop that I walk to down the street. It's going to be like 10 to 15%. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with Britt on that.
Okay. Restaurant where you are going to sit there, but you order at the counter.
No, I like, I'm sure I do it because I'm a weak man and I don't, but like, no,
they're going to press that button, Brett. They're going to say, here's a cheap guy.
If it's like a Chipotle style service thing, I don't get it. And I don't agree with that. But yet I do it because the pull of being righteous in Seattle is so strong that I feel I have to like put in my little self-righteousness token, but I do oppose it.
Yeah. Same. I don't. I think it's probably just going to a corporation at that point. They're not giving it to anybody.
What if it's actually a local business, but you still order at the counter and Ezel's, I feel like, is kind of an interesting middle example where they're a local chain, but they, are still local.
That is fast food. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But the things it's going to do to your stomach, and I love Ezel's, are fast food adjacent. So I don't feel
no
as bad.
tip
But
for
you know
that.
what? Even then I still do. It's like, and I also will try to carry around some bills just to throw a buck in the tip jar. I feel like cash money is always going to be a expression of solidarity and, untaxable income for them. So I try to do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I give them prayers and
Wait, what do you, I want to hear, what do you do for
graciousness.
yourselves then, Marcus?
I still like am in solidarity with like the founder who I guess was like booted out and so I've not eaten there since then. So no, I would not leave a tip just for that very reason.
Okay. Wow. What a I respect that kind of petty, man.
It's keeping me alive these days, man.
It's been like 10 years or 15 years since that happened, I think.
I will say this, like if I have a connection or the person is really nice, like I was at Little Things, I was buying a bottle of wine that I took back home with me. Literally all they did was just get it off of the shelf and the tip screen came up and I gave 25%.
Oh my God, a
man.
nightmare.
Like,
That's what they're counting on.
He literally did nothing but hand me. He did nothing but except for what he's paid to do per hour. And he gave me the bottle of wine, and I gave him $15.
It often feels like it's asking, like, did you like me? And you're kind of like, I did, and I don't know how to show this besides by giving you some money.
Yes.
Seattle is ripe for this sort of exploitation too, because of our sort of passive aggressiveness and our sort of meekness or mildness. We are ripe to be just have money raking in over people that are like too shy to be like, no, I ain't giving you no money. East Coast should be like, get this shit out of my face. I gave you cash. Stay away.
But also, I think there's the added layer of, I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, Dear White People, but there's a scene in there where this guy, he's going over the stereotype of like that black people don't tip, right? And so he's at this dinner and he's going through the different scenarios and he's like, this was some piss poor service, but if I don't leave a tip, is it going to be that the stereotype that I don't, or that, black people don't tip, or should I leave an extra tip just to say that I'm able to? So yeah, you have also that added to you here in the city.
So you're doing it for representation.
Very much so. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Marcus, I feel that same pressure. I'm like, I don't want to be upholding this like Asians are cheap situation. Like I will try and be as generous as I can, especially if it's a local small business and you actually did talk with someone who worked there in some way. All right. Well, I don't know that this is going to clear things up once and for all, but I am glad to know that I am not the only one confused about this and that we're mostly on the same page about like when to tip and also that we all get suckered into tipping in situations where it's like, I could have kept that $15, but sure, I guess it's yours now.
Yeah.
That's all for today here at CityCast Seattle. Brett Hamill, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure as always.
And Marcus Harrison Green, thank you for joining us.
It's the joy of joys, Jane.
I'm your host, Jane Sihu. And listeners, we would love to hear from you. If you have hot takes on tipping, or even kind of lukewarm ones, that's fine too. Send us an email at seattle@citycast.fm. You can also text us or leave us a voicemail on the CityCast hotline at 206-880-3931. Until next time, see ya, Seattle.